Today on Hebrew Grammar Help, grammatical prefixes. Welcome back to Hebrew Grammar Help. Today I'll be talking about grammatical prefixes. There are 4 prepositions, 3 conjunctions, and a definite article. They all attach to the following word, and sometimes things change around a little bit due to the properties of the following word or the following letter. So let's get started. We're going to start with the definite article ha, which is a hey attached to the beginning of a word. And in Hebrew, they call this hey hayediah. This prefix has 2 sounds, but 3 possible nikud. The regular way is with a patach, so it sounds like ha. And then in certain conditions, it can be with a kamatz. And so it is still sounding like ah. And so basically, we modern Hebrew learners don't really care about those conditions because it still just sounds like ha, and we don't write vowels anyway, so we are never going to write it wrong. And so the last vowel that can possibly be under the he is a segol, and so then it sounds like he instead of ha. And there are 4 conditions in which this is possible. So the first one is if the word that it attaches to starts with an unstressed hey with a kamatz. And the second condition is if that following word starts with an unstressed ayin with kamatz. And the third and fourth conditions are if they start with a chet with a kamatz or a chet with a chataf kamatz, and those can be stressed or unstressed. It doesn't matter there. So it's a lot of rules, and to be honest, I actually had to look them up because my ulpan, they never actually teach these rules. And that's because they're really, for modern Hebrew speakers, not that important. If I accidentally say ha-chatul instead of he-chatul, everybody's going to understand me. It's probably not even going to be noticed. So there are 2 really interesting things about the definite article. If there is a noun phrase with an adjective or multiple adjectives, then the he hayediah goes on not only the noun, but it attaches to all of the adjectives in that noun phrase. So let's look at this noun phrase. It says, Safa Atika me'anyenet yafa, which means a beautiful, interesting, ancient language. But if we want to say the beautiful, ancient, interesting language, we have to, in every other language that I've ever learned, we only put the word the or the article, whatever it is, if it's a word or an affix, we just put it once, but not in Hebrew. In Hebrew, we would have to say hasafa, ha'atika, ha'me'anyenet, ha'yafa. Another weirdity is when we have a compound word or a phrase that has 2 nouns together, and we call that smichut in Hebrew, and I usually hear it referred to as a construct phrase in English. So when you have a phrase like this, they always say that the he hayediah goes on the second noun. And what is actually more accurate is to say that it goes on the last noun, because sometimes these phrases can have 3 or 4 nouns. So Beit Sefer is a word that we learn pretty early on, and it means school, but it literally means book house. If we want to say the school, it's not ha-bet sefer, which intuitively makes the most sense. It's bet ha-sefer. This definitely takes some time to get used to. All right, that's it for He Hayediah. Now let's move on to 3 of the prepositions, be, le, and ke. So prepositions are notorious for not having just one translation into another language. But in general, be means in or on, le means to or for, and ke means like or as. The general rule is that the base form of these prepositions is to have a schwa under them. So be, le, ke. And then it's attached to the following word. So if that word starts with a letter that has a dagesh lene, a hardening dagesh, then that dagesh also gets deleted. So the word bet sefer has a hardening dagesh in the bet. And so if we want to say in a school, we would say bevet sefer. Or to a school, levet sefer. Or like a school, kevet sefer. So it definitely loses that dagesh. And if that following word starts with a letter that has a schwa, then we have a problem, because in Hebrew it is forbidden for a word, any word, to start with 2 schwas in a row. So what ends up happening is that our preposition gets a chirik instead of a schwa. So it sounds like bi, li, or ki instead of be, le, and ke. And one of the most important rules to remember is that if the following word starts with a He Hayediah, that He gets deleted. So you don't write it and you don't hear it. You don't say it. And what happens is whatever vowel was under that He Hayediah is now under the preposition. And the dagesh lene, or whatever dagesh you have there, stays in place. So it's ba bayit, la bayit, ka bayit. So remember, if the vowel under the He Hayediah is a kamatz or a segol because of the following letter, then your preposition is going to get that kamatz or that segol. But since schwa sounds like a really short segol, you're probably not going to hear much of a difference. But so if I say lechatul, and if I were writing with nikud, I wrote it with a schwa, that means to a cat or for a cat. But if I say lechatul and I write it with a segol, then that means to the cat or for the cat. To be honest, I would probably say la chatul and probably nobody would bat an eye. The last preposition prefix is a mem, and it's usually translated as of or from. It is different. It's going to act very differently from the other 3 prepositions because it is a contracted form of the freestanding preposition min. The other 3 only have a prefix form. They do not have a freestanding form that corresponds with them. Now, the first way that this preposition is different is that its regular vowel is a chirik instead of a schwa. So the normal way to say it is mi. And then also completely opposite to what happens with be, le, and ke, the following letter gets a dagesh, if at all possible. So this is a dagesh forte, a doubling dagesh. So it goes on all of the letters except for the gutturals. So for us modern Hebrew learners, this doesn't make too much of a difference, except if the following word starts with a bet or a kaf or a pei, then we know we have to pronounce it like a B, a K, or a P instead of the fricative, the V, the Ch, or the F, the F sound. But for biblical Hebrew learners, it's important also because being a doubling dagesh, it affects syllable structure and all kinds of stuff that I don't understand. Now, guttural letters cannot take a dagesh at all. And so when the mem is attached to a word that starts with a guttural letter, the vowel under the mem changes from a chirik to a tsere, and so it sounds like meh. So this affects all words that start with aleph, hey, chet, ayin, and resh. Resh sometimes acts like a guttural and sometimes not, but here it does act like a guttural with respect to what vowel is going to be under the mem. Again, if you say it wrong, it's completely understandable. It's just, I think the difference in the vowel between an E and an E sound is a little bit noticeable. And possibly the most important thing to remember about the mem prefix is that if it attaches to a word with a hey hayediyah, the hey stays, and the vowel under the mem is going to be a tsere because of the hey being a guttural. All of these rules about the hey staying and the dagesh staying, they all stem from the fact that there is a missing nun, because the original word was min. And when that nun got dropped, they compensated for it by doubling the following letter or doing all these other things. So that's why the mem prefix is so different from all of the other prepositions. Okay, moving on to conjunctions. The first conjunction is a coordinating conjunction, and it's just a vav, and it means and. In general, it has a schwa under it, and so it sounds like ve. But there is a rule called the boom-off rule. And this rule says that if the following word starts with one of these letters, bet, vav, mem, or pei, then the vav is actually going to convert to a shuruk and sound like ooh. And of course, we say boom-off, and when we write the name of the rule, we write it with a fe-so-feet, but of course, it's going to be a regular pei because it's going to be at the beginning of a word. So the vav with a schwa converts to a shuruk before bet, vav, mem, or pei. And also, if the following word starts with a letter that has a schwa. And the second part of the rule is really easy to remember because we know that we cannot have a word that starts with two schwas in a row. And so that's how it's easy to remember that we're going to have an ooh there. Now, way back in 1990, when I was in college, this was a hard and fast rule. We spent a lot of time on it, and we really, if ever we said ve before a boom-off letter or before a word starting with a schwa, our teacher would correct us and make us say it the right way. But it seems to have really relaxed in the 30 years since I've been in college. And a lot of Israelis will say that it even sounds a little stuffy if you use the boom off rule when you're just chatting with your friends. So I think this is gonna be a situation where you're gonna have some grammar police types that if you say ve machar, they're gonna be like, that should be u machar. And you're gonna have other people who are native Israelis who are gonna say ve machar. When I'm speaking, I do try to remember to use it, and sometimes I don't even try, sometimes it just comes out naturally. But I also forget a lot, and I really don't stress out too much about it. The other thing is that if the first letter of the following word starts with a dagesh lene, it loses the dagesh lene. And I actually had to look this up because I knew this happened if it was a bet or a pay because of the oo sound, but it actually also happens even before a kaf. So if I want to say I have a cat and a dog, I say yesh li chatul vechelev, not vekelev. I don't know if this has just never come up, if I've never said a sentence like that. I can't recall ever being corrected about that. Like I said, I had to look up the rule because I was not sure if it applied before a kaf. All right, one last thing with vav. If your following word starts with a yod with a shwa, then the vav gets a chirik instead of converting to u, a shuruk, right? The vav gets a chirik, and then the yod loses its shwa. So it makes it more like a long chirik. Okay, last but not least, we have two subordinating conjunctions. We have she, meaning that, and we have keshe, meaning when. It's more like she. So she can be used in a sentence like Ani choshevet shehi medaberet ivrit. I think that she speaks Hebrew. Now in English, we can often delete that word that, right? I think she speaks Hebrew is a perfectly fine sentence. But in Hebrew, you cannot delete the she. She can also be used in a relative clause, which is a subordinate clause that describes a noun. Zo haisha shemedaberet ivrit. That's the woman who speaks Hebrew, or that's the woman that speaks Hebrew. Right? Which woman? The woman that speaks Hebrew. And kshe is used in a sentence like Kshani medaberet ivrit, ani osa ta'uyot. When I speak Hebrew, I make mistakes. So these two prefixes are by far the easiest because they don't change at all with respect to what is coming after. They only have one form each, she and kshe. All right, you made it to the end. Now you know how to use these prefixes and what vowels go with them. As always, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments and I will do my best to respond. And if you have some aspect of Hebrew grammar that has you flummoxed, let me know and I will make a video. Hit like if you enjoyed this video and subscribe and press the notification bell if you want to see more. Lehitraot bapa'am aba'ah. See you next time.